All right, in this video, we're going to use what we learned before to look at the role that banks play in creating money. So we're looking at the role banks play creating money. I'll do it like that because the creating of money might be a little different than you are thinking of. So in this particular way, we're going to use the M1 definition of money just to keep things simple. So this is basically this is basically cash in circulation plus checking deposits. Okay, so we're going to look at this M1 definition of money. Now, we're going to start this by looking at one bank, and we'll look at the T account for one bank. So T account is a way to represent the balance sheet, right? The T account is this way we looked at before to represent the balance sheet. So we're going to start with the T account for, let's say, B of A, Bank of America. Okay, so here's liabilities. So yeah, Bank of America is a large U.S. bank that's found in quite a few different states. So let's just pick this one. So we have our assets and our liabilities. I'm not going to look at the overall balance sheet. We're just going to look at how this balance sheet changes. So again, this diagram is called a T account because it looks kind of like the letter T, right? So we're going to have a transaction, and then we are going to show how it changes the money supply. Okay, that's our goal here. All right, so first we need to know some information. So one is, in this economy, our required reserve ratio is equal to 10%. So the required reserve ratio is the amount of the checking deposits, the percentage that the banks must keep inside their bank. Well, they must keep it in reserves, right? They're not allowed to loan it out. They must keep it. So the bank's required to keep this portion. So they're not allowed to loan this part out. They must keep it. Okay, so they're going to have to, so whatever comes into their bank, then they have to keep 10% in reserves. The two places they can keep their reserves, they can keep their reserves in their vaults, or they can deposit their reserves with the Federal Reserve, with the central bank. Okay, so we have our, now let's go to our transaction. So our transaction is, we have someone, let's suppose you, you have a bunch of cash under your pillow, and you deposit $1,000 in cash into Bank of America. Okay, so that's the first thing that happens. So we can go ahead and represent this. So on the deposit side, there's going to be now $1,000, because when you come back, they owe you your $1,000. And because they have this cash inside their bank, their reserves are also $1,000. Okay, so you might be imagining, well, the bank now just sits on this, and they're just going to sit on this, and nothing's going to change. And they keep your money there and wait for you to come back. But that's not actually how banks work. Banks will generally keep part of the money you put in, and the rest of it they're going to loan out to somebody else to use it. Okay, so you still have your deposit in the sense that when you come back, you can take your money out if you want to. But when you put money in, they generally only keep part of it in their actual vaults, in their reserves, and the rest of it they're gonna loan out. So how much they keep depends on several things, but for right now we're just gonna assume that they keep as little as they have to, which means they keep 10%. Okay, so let's look at, so the bank must keep 10% times 1,000. Okay, so they must keep $100. And therefore they can loan out the excess reserves. What we call these excess reserves is now the 900. So they have 900 more reserves than they need to. Okay, so this one they can loan it. This one, the 900, they can loan this out. Okay, so let's assume this bank makes the maximum loan. So let's assume, so now our bank, B of A, loans the full 900 to a customer. Okay, so whoever that customer is, somebody else is the customer. So now they make this loan, so this goes into their balance sheet. It's going to go in on both sides. So the loan, remember, is an asset. So they make a loan for 900, and then they create into the customer's account. This is a different customer, not the original customer. They deposit 900 in this customer's account, and the customer can take this money out, right? So already we can see that our original $1,000 deposit has actually created two deposits, right? So this is now bigger. We have this and this. So our original $1,000 deposit has been multiplied a little bit. Okay, so let's continue this on. Let's go to the next step. So the next step is, well, the customer withdraws to customer 2. Okay, customer 2 withdraws the $900 and pays for a new kayak. Okay, they pay for a new kayak, and then the sporting goods store deposits the $900 that they receive in Chase Bank. Okay, so now we need to show this next transaction. Okay, I'm gonna make this a little smaller so we can have some space over here. So now we got our Chase Bank over here, and they got their T account. So just for short, I'll use A and L. So now they deposit, this customer deposit $900. And now they have reserves of $900, and we need to go back and adjust the other account. Okay, so they deposit 900. Well, the reserves are 900, so they actually, took. You can think of it as a check, or you can think of it as cash. But they took this $900 and it entered Chase. So that $900 has to have left B of A. So how do we adjust the B of A numbers? Well, the first thing we can adjust is this deposit is no longer there because they took the money out, right? And the second thing, when we adjust one side, we have to adjust the other, the reserves. So to take this $900 deposit out, well, they have to take $900 in reserves out. So actually, there's only 100 reserves, left in the original bank. So there's only 100 of reserves left there. The other 900 have gone here. Now this reserves, you brought in 10 $100 bills originally. Well, something, you can think of it something like that. So this is actually something physical, and this doesn't change. Okay, but what is changing is the total deposits are changing. So now what's going to happen next? Okay, so this is where we're at, and then now there's the next step. Okay, so next we get, so this was the first thing, you deposit the bank. The second thing was they loan it to another customer who then pays for something and it goes into another bank. Now the third thing, Chase, where's Chase at? Okay, so let's look at Chase. So they make a loan. Okay, so well, how much must they, so to figure out how much big their loan is, you got to see what they need. So they must keep 10% if the required reserve ratio is 10%, and of the deposit of 900. So they must keep 90. Therefore, they can loan, the excess reserves are 900 minus 90. Okay, so they're allowed to loan up to 810. So let's assume they make a loan of $810. Okay, so they make the maximum loan we're kind of assuming here. So let's go ahead and do that. So they loan 810 to one of their customers. So that customer has a deposit of 810, and then now what's that customer going to do? Okay, so let's come back. Let's go to the next step. So to customer 3. So customer 3 withdraws the 810 and uses to buy a bike. Okay, and then so now again we go back to this. Well, the deposit is now gone. The $900 is no longer $900. Now it's just $90. Okay, because they only had to keep 10% of it. The other 810 has been taken out. The loan is still there, and the deposits are still there. Okay, so now we can see where we're at, and then the same process is going to continue. This next person then pays for the bike. The person who sells the bike then puts the money into another bank, and then that bank will keep 10%, right? And they will loan out the rest. And this will continue over and over and over and over, okay? And so on. So I'm just going to say and so on at this point.